network had been a major thorn in the side of the German occupation. Its aim was to sabotage the Nazi war effort. By 1944, hundreds of these resistance fighters had been imprisoned at the notorious Amiens prison in northern France, and word had reached the Allies that on February the 19th, 200 French men and women would be executed. An ingenious plan was hatched. Mosquitoes would be used to bomb the walls surrounding the prison, so that the resistance fighters could escape. It was called Operation Jericho. The main prison layout was in the shape of a crucifix surrounded by a 20-foot high wall, 3 feet thick and topped with broken glass. Located at the end of a long road, the prison was surrounded by open, flat countryside. The timing of the raid was vital. It had to be at midday when the prisoners were exercising in the yard and the guards were having lunch. Equally important was the placing of the bombs. Great care had to be taken so that enough explosive was used to smash a hole in the outside wall, but not so much as to kill all the inmates. When told of the danger, the resistance fighters replied they would rather die from RAF bombs than by a German firing squad. On the morning of the 18th of February, the Mosquito crews were told for the first time what their target was.
We went into the briefing room around about 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning. And on the table was a mock-up model of the Amiens prison. And we were told we were going to try and breach the walls and give the prisoners a chance to escape.
The attack, timed for exactly 12 o'clock midday, consisted of 3 stages.
One squadron was briefed to breach the walls, in other words, to toss the bombs or fly very low level and put the bombs at the base of the walls, if possible. The second squadron were to come in at 12:02 when the guards had gone to lunch and bomb the dining hall, mess hall, anything they could lay their hands on to keep the guards under control. In case of the first squadron not breaching the walls completely, or the second squadron not doing the guards' quarters, etc., then the third squadron would bomb the whole prison.
As the crews waited for takeoff, it appeared that the raid might be cancelled. The weather had closed in, and all aircraft were grounded.
It was very, very bad weather, low cloud and sort of spitting snow, do you know what I mean? Very low cloud. And we didn't think it would go on.
What the Mosquito crews did not know was that the French resistance had sent a coded message. Strike now or never. Execution's imminent. At the last possible moment, and with only 2 hours before the deadline, 18 Mosquitoes armed with a 500-pound bomb load took off in conditions worse than most of the crews had ever encountered.
We climbed through the cloud, and above the cloud we just joined up and went back down onto the sea level across to France.
Flying in 2 groups, and at almost 0 feet, they swept across the English Channel. Amazingly, as they approached the French coast, the weather improved. It seemed that luck was on their side.
When we got to France, it was covered in snow, of course, but it was clear. And we flew around and we picked up the road from Amiens to Albert. Long, straight road. And we settled down for the run in.
In the fields around the prison, French resistance fighters anxiously searched the sky, waiting for the Mosquitoes to help their comrades escape.
We could see the prison ahead. And we got down very, very low indeed. And we were coming down to around about 190, 180 knots.
With only minutes to go, and with the Germans completely unaware, the Mosquitoes neared the prison.
We opened our bomb doors about a mile from prison, flying at about 10 to 15 feet. And we had to pull up go over the walls. We'd let our bombs go, and they went through the base of the wall. I turned to starboard, and as I looked down, I saw the startled face of the machine gunner in the little cupola on top of the prison. We looked at each other, I suppose, and then I was down onto the deck in loose formation following the wing commander.
The raid was a success, and the Mosquitoes had pulled off an amazing feat of courage. 255 prisoners escaped, but 37 were killed, along with 50 German guards. The Gestapo were vicious in their revenge, and 260 prisoners were killed in reprisal. The raid was a wake-up call to the Germans.
As far as I can see, this was a brilliant piece of precision bombing. The first flight took out the walls, blew in the doors, allowed people to escape. The second flight took the walls down. In fact, they didn't need the third flight. I think it was a startling success because it would have demonstrated to the Germans that the Royal Air Force could place bombs wherever they wanted to across occupied Europe.
The Mosquitoes continued to carry out their unique style of war against the Germans. It was a period that would see them operating deep inside occupied Europe. Using technology that was years ahead of its time, they hunted down the Nazis. No one was beyond the reach of the Mosquito. Throughout the long and bloody conflict of World War II, the 400-mile-per-hour wooden Mosquito was always at the front of battle, always taking the fight to the enemy. But it was the Americans that came up with yet another novel use for this versatile aircraft. Late in 1944, the OSS, the Office of Strategic Services, a forerunner of the CIA, took over 5 Mosquitoes to work with their agents in occupied countries. Because the war was moving so rapidly, intelligence was having a hard time knowing exactly what the enemy was doing. Only agents behind enemy lines could supply this information. It was vital that these agents got this information back. Using Morse code was no good, as the Germans could easily detect it. Something else had to be found. 2 American scientists had developed a transmitter that enabled an agent to talk to an aircraft. Called the Joan Eleanor system, after one of the scientists' wives, it was an early version of the mobile phone. By transmitting on a waveband so narrow, the Germans could only detect the agent if they were within 50 feet of him. But the ingenious part of this plan was the Mosquito. With its speed and height, it could fly undetected along a predetermined 150-mile line, listening for the agent's message. Deep inside the Mosquito was an OSS operative.
Within the fuselage, it was hardly enough room to move, and I was sitting almost on top of a big fuel tank. The petrol in there would expand and would come out on a special valve, and I could see it down there bubbling. And that was petrol. When you switched on your suit, you always expected a spark, boom. But we were so high that there was very little oxygen in the air.
When the Mosquito got to the area, the OSS operative would begin calling the agent.
This is 5278, 5278, calling Z31, 31, 31, and then wait for him to say, yes, I'm here, and give me the answering code.
Sometimes the Mosquito would fly along the designated route for hours on end before the agent answered.
When you heard them, it was exciting. It was, look, I've got him, finally. Confirmed who he was, and his short messages would be such and such a unit is there, and they're going west on highway number so-and-so, and it's 2 battalions or whatever it is, and and we could get it back in 3-4 hours.
But many times the agent never answered. Sometimes they could not find a safe place in which to send their message. Sometimes no one ever knew.
Well, when time was up, the pilot knew just how much petrol we had, we'd turn around, go back.
The Mosquito had for a long time been the weapon of choice as a pathfinder for the bombers. But as a low-level marker, it was second to none in helping annihilate the German war machine in France. To enable precision bombing and to reduce civilian casualties, the Mosquito would fly with the squadrons of heavy bombers. As they neared their drop zone, the bombers dropped flares which illuminated the sky, and the Mosquitoes dived down to identify their individual targets.
So 4 of you were coming in, and the rule was that the first one who saw it called tally-ho, just that. You then positioned yourself and dived on one end of the target. And when you judged that you were at the right position above the ground, which was probably at about 1,000 feet, you were coming down at quite a speed after all, you pressed the button and away went 4 500-pound markers, and down they went, whoop, and made a great blob of red on the ground. You got the hell out of it.
Only when the target was ringed in red marker bombs would the Mosquito leader call up the oncoming bombers. But one of the Mosquito's most demanding roles was that of interdiction, the cutting off of enemy supplies. Nowhere was this more graphically demonstrated than in the days leading up to and after June the 6th, 1944, D-Day. As Allied troops fought a bloody battle to gain a foothold in France, the Mosquitoes hunted independently, seeking out enemy supply lines.
Trains we preferred to attack because they were always carrying war material on it, or reinforcements for the front. Sometimes you could attack a train going into a tunnel, and you'd get the other end of the tunnel and wait for it and shoot it up as it came out. It was fun, really, shooting up trains.
During the month of June, Bomber Command flew over 15,000 raids in support of the Allied invasion forces, and by the end of 1944 had helped drive the Germans back into their own country. Finally, on May the 2nd, 1945, 2 days after Hitler's suicide in Berlin, 126 Mosquitoes took part in the last raid of the war in Europe. Their target, the German port of Kiel. Within 2 hours, the city was reduced to rubble, a grim legacy to the destructive power of the wooden wonder. The aircraft that had been seen as some sort of joke when first designed had grown of age. It had become one of the most feared and lethal killers of World War II. Over 7,700 had been built, and over 40 different variations had served in all theaters of the war. To the men who had flown it, the Mosquito was second to none.
It was a love affair, and I thought, well, when I finished flying, that was it. I never flew another aircraft again after the Mosquito, never.
It's wrong, really, to say it was a legend, because the legend suggests it wasn't real, and the Mosquito was certainly reality. But it was a lovely aircraft, beautiful aircraft to look at, marvellous aircraft to fly.
Well, in many cases saved my life, but